Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where experts in the field inform, educate and inspire the community to be healthier, more balanced and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today is Jacqui Grant. She's an NDIS business consultant and empowerment coach. Welcome to the show, Jacqui.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Jacqui, what's the secret for NDIS providers to be successful?
One of the big key points to being a success is to understand your scope of practice and to ensure that those services that you want to provide are actually part of a participant's plan. Now, one of the things that happens is that a lot of people decide to be a sole trader in the NDIS business and they think, oh, I'll just get an ABN, I'll get some insurance and that's all I really need. But they don't understand how their services can provide value to participants. Basically, under NDIS, and one of the places to check is the NDIS pricing arrangement on their website, is service providers can be nurses, they could be allied health professionals, support workers, now that is the biggest one and what most people have in their plan, psychology, there's even transport, meal prep, and then there's space for respite, short-term accommodation, and then specialised disability accommodation. It's a long list, I understand. And one of the keys for people to have that success for their own business is to know exactly where they fit in with the plan and the value and the importance and that it's reasonable and necessary for the participant. So reasonable and necessary is one of the things that NDIS talk about a lot, and it means that the service that the person has is relevant to their disability and it is necessary. With the scope of practice, one of the things that we currently find, especially with businesses that come to me, is that they don't realise, like, they have a qualification such as a hairdresser, which is great, it's a great skill, but when you want to be a support worker, do you understand what that means and the risks to being a support worker? Because you're providing care and services, so helping someone showering, dressing, shopping, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but when someone has a disability, they are vulnerable, they're open to risk, and if you don't understand how to do a risk assessment, if you don't understand some of the things that are required for that person or even their disability, for example, they may have an acquired brain injury. Now, you need to understand behaviour and how temperament, they might be aggressive, they might withdraw. So understanding those disabilities is really important. And if you don't have that lived experience, then working as a support worker can, in some cases, cause harm rather than what we want, which is empowerment and support and encouraging choice and control for the person. Quality of life.
Why is business compliance so important?
Well, in Australia, owning a business, whether it's a company, partnership, there's consumer law, there's ATO requirements and insurance requirements, and NDIS have their set of requirements as well. Now, with that, when you have your paperwork, so your compliance is documents, policies and procedures, and you not only have them, but you use them, you are able to ensure that if there is ever an incident, and let's face it, incidents happen, we're dealing with people, you know exactly what to do, who to go to. Some incidents are reportable to NDIS. So if you don't have your business compliance in place, your business plan, financial plan, you could find yourself at high risk of major problems and nobody wants that. Now, just to go a little deeper into that, with NDIS, you can either be a NDIS registered service provider, so that means you put an application into NDIS, you have an audit, and you have to understand national practice standards, NDIS practice standards, and then you wait for your registration after your audit and you will be audited regularly. It's part of NDIS compliance. However, the way NDIS is, you don't need to be a registered NDIS provider, and that means that you don't have to put in the application and you don't have to be audited. But people sort of think, well, if I'm just a sole trader, I'm not NDIS registered, I don't need documents, policies and procedures. Well, technically, best practice would indicate you do, because you should be doing care plans. You should be looking at how you can support your participant with their goals. And that's what a care plan does. It understands the person's needs and how to help them achieve them to be the best they can.
What are some of the tips and advice you'd offer to businesses to increase participation and engagement?
So one of the biggest things I see everywhere, and one of the biggest questions people ask me, so social media, I met a lady in the cafe the other day and she's like, oh, I want to grow my NDIS business, how do I do it? And so one of the first things I asked her was about her social media. What presence do you have? Do you have a website? How do you know that you are the right person for the people reading your Facebook post? What is your message and how clear is it? So having a really good business plan that incorporates a marketing plan can help. A website that is really clear and it makes it easy for people to go, oh, that's the service I want. And it builds trust. And of course, understanding your potential participants' hobbies, interests. What do they want to do? What do they want to get out of their plan? What's important to them? So understanding what that looks like a day in their life and how you can best help them achieve that. The other thing is, as a business, network. Get to know other businesses in your area or even nationally, and attend things like networking events, to attend education sessions where you've got those common grounds of, like, you might all be learning about epilepsy or acquired brain injuries or anything, autism, things like that, where you are likely to meet either other service providers and or people that have somebody in their life that has a disability, or it could be the person themselves. So really branching out and getting to know a lot of different people. And finally, word of mouth, reputation. Like when somebody says, Mary was great, she showed up on time, she was reliable and she listened to me. Sometimes that is the best way to get additional business and grow.
Thank you, Jacqui, for such important information. If you'd like to know more about Jacqui Grant and what NDIS service providers can do to be successful, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we'll have another interesting guest with another interesting topic.
After the break, animal communicator and therapist Caroline Pope demystifies animal craniosacral therapy. Welcome back. Today we have Caroline Pope in the studio. She is an animal communicator and therapist, and today we are going to be demystifying animal craniosacral therapy. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Yes. Now tell me, can you explain what animal craniosacral therapy is?
Pretty much the same as human craniosacral therapy. A lot of people will know it as CST for short. Derived from osteopathy. It's a very hands-on therapy, but literally the most pressure you're putting on is that of a 5-cent piece. So it's much more allowing the body what it needs to do rather than trying to force the body, because what a therapist thinks the body needs to do versus what the body knows it needs to do can kind of be a bit like the Montagues and the Capulets, really. So the most pressure I'm putting on is literally that of a 5-cent piece. And I often say to my clients, it's like watching paint dry, because they're just sitting and the dog or cat may close its eyes, it may lay down. You're not seeing much. But what's actually going on internally, there's a lot of recalibrating, and it's really, really big. If you ever have a CST yourself, you're going to feel a difference. And that's why I actually collaborate with a vet, because she will bounce information to me, or I will say to her, "You're not quite sure about X or Y, can you please check that out?" Because no one person can fix everything. And often if I'm feeling restrictions, say for example in the spine, everything runs off the spine. So the moment the animal's movement is compromised, so is its digestion, its elimination. Dog may well be having heart problems, for example, All the nerves for the heart innervate out of the parietal bone and go down through the thoracic. So if your dog's got problems in its thoracic area or the parietal bone's jammed, that makes a huge difference to what the dog's heart is doing, and its medication may need to be adjusted. Everything interreacts with everything else. It's the one body. We're past the days of saying, oh, this is good for the heart. The fact that your liver's going to keel over in 6 months has got nothing to do with it. It's that integrative, holistic approach.
And how did you get into it and why?
Started with cranial for myself because I had thyroid problems at the time and really, really bad migraines. And CST actually got rid of them. I was literally being injected every second day with really heavy duty stuff, didn't need anything. Because I'm me, I pushed my therapist to work on a horse I had at the time, and I'd had him for, I think, 6 years by that stage. Great horse, but he'd always been tetchy to put a bridle on. Deb released his temporals, which are temporal bones, which are basically releasing around the ears. And from that day on, I never had another issue with a bridle. And of course, that got my very instant and undivided attention. Started exploring it, spoke to a few clients about it, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to afford it at the time. Had a phone call one day, picked it up, and it was one of the clients. They'd banded together and went, right, you're going to owe us X amount of CSTs. There's a course coming up. This is where it is. We've paid for it. Off you go. So I was incredibly lucky. And from the first day, I was just hooked.
And can you explain exactly what it is you do?
Animal will come in. I also use a bioenergetic handheld device because it speeds things up and it helps calm the animal, because no animal likes being on a table. I mean, obviously horses aren't going to go on a table. That's a little different. But most animals don't like heights in the same way I'm terrified of it. So it helps. And it's literally a hands-on therapy. I can start sometimes at the back end. Other times I'll start with one hand under the chest or the neck or the head. It really depends on the individual animal and also where they're comfortable, because a lot of animals, particularly dogs, can be quite head shy. Or if their neck's really sore, they're not going to want you putting hands on, and trust is earned. It's not given. And if a dog's got a really big problem, or any animal at one end, starting at the other builds up trust and releases the restrictions. So by the time you get to where the problem really is, they're not worried. And a lot of the time they'll literally lie down and just pass out, which is really nice.
And what sort of ailments do you treat?
Pretty much anything in the age bracket. Arthritis, stiffness can help with a lot of dogs that start getting lack of proprioception and neurological as they get older. Vestibular disease in dogs and cats is a big one. Epilepsy, pretty much encephalitis, pretty much anything, because it improves health. It's no different to you. It's being proactive rather than reactive. And of course, the earlier you can get to something, you really need to be proactive. And long term, it's cheaper too to be proactive rather than reactive. I say to people, change of seasons, but you may well find that your dog or cat needs one session a week if they're acute or it's been let go for a really long time, for 4 or 5 weeks, and you may get down to 1 trip a month. But if you stretch it out to 6 weeks, you might be back to where you are. And it's not fair to our animal friends to leave them in pain when we can make some lifestyle adjustments and change the quality of life so very, very much. Because at the end of the day, quantity is great, don't get me wrong. We all want our animals to live to an old age. But if there's no quality, it's all irrelevant. And this is where holistic health and, in my case, craniosacral therapy makes such a difference. It's about the quality of life. And the more we can do to improve that, the happier everyone is.
And can you please give us some advice on how to have a healthy and happy animal?
Be proactive. I generally say every change of season, as they start to age from about the age of 6, possibly 4 with the larger dogs, because of course there's all the rate of aging. But just stuff like all your moodle-oodles and anything with hair under the pads, trim it back, because otherwise it's like you walking in socks instead of bare feet. They slide, they hurt themselves. Tiles, floating floor, timber laminate, polished floorboards, really bad for dogs and aged cats. I know they're a pain, but carpet runners are your best friend, and they can literally, in a lot of cases, be the difference between an animal being on painkillers and not, because every time they slide or scrabble, that's all we see, they experience a lot of pain. Just getting your flooring right, that's where your dog or cat spends 80 to 90% of their time. It makes a huge difference.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Caroline. That was really interesting and very educational. For those interested in learning more about Caroline Pope and animal craniosacral therapy, please head to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au, and hang around for after the break. We have another amazing guest.
Stay tuned. After the break, naturopath, lecturer and author Michèle Wolff will be talking about, are bloating and irritable bowel syndrome curable? Welcome back. Our next guest, Michèle Wolff, is a naturopath, author and lecturer, and the topic we'll be discussing is how food affects our digestive and nervous systems. Welcome, Michèle.
Thank you, Megan.
So how does food affect our digestive system?
Food can have a big impact on our digestion because it's going straight into our digestive system, and you've got several organs of your digestive systems. So when you eat food, it can impact that and put more strain on that, and it can also impact the way that your bowel moves, which is called peristalsis. So for example, if you eat too much sugar, you'll put a lot of pressure on your pancreas with the insulin production. So if that goes on and you have too much sugar, you can be at risk for diabetes, for example. And then also if you have too much sugar, that becomes a breeding ground for pathology. So you can get an overgrowth of abnormal bacteria like fungus and parasites. So eating can really affect your mood. More junk foods, white flours, sugars, unhealthy drinks, so too much alcohol, too much soft drink, too much caffeine, can have a negative effect on your gut and on your brain. And then if you're overloading your digestive system with any food, that can cause a problem as well. So for example, if you overeat meat and you're not having vegetables with the meat and you're eating that late at night, your stomach can't handle it. So it takes a lot to produce enough hydrochloric acid to break down that meat into a soup. And you want to have really good amounts of plant food to create that nice microbe, like having healthy soil, to produce a really healthy intestine. And you want to be having food that has the right amount of nutrients to give you energy and to help your nervous system and to help your mood. So when you've broken that food down in your stomach, your small intestine, which is 22 feet that goes from the stomach, that absorbs all your good nutrients. So you want to have plenty of nutrients for energy and for relaxation and to feed all your other organs, and for your diet to be more anti-inflammatory rather than pro-inflammatory. Having more of a Mediterranean diet with lots of legumes, lots of green leafy vegetables, good oils like olive oils, nuts and seeds, they have a really positive effect. And having a variety. So if you have 40 different plant foods a week, that feeds your whole microbiome. Now that can seem overwhelming, but if you have a curry, say, with 7 spices, those spices count as plant food. So you could have as a base onion, garlic, a turmeric, cumin, and some Italian herbs, and you've got quite a range already. So it's increasing the diversity of plant foods and avoiding unhealthy drinks and unhealthy foods, particularly junk foods, particularly sugars, and keeping carbohydrates quite low as well. So carbohydrates should only be 1/4 of your diet, not half of your diet.
How does food actually affect our nervous system?
So food affects your nervous system in a couple of ways. Firstly, by the nutrients it contains. So your nervous system needs a lot of magnesium, a lot of calcium, a lot of potassium, a lot of B vitamins in order to operate effectively. And the adrenal glands, which are part of your nervous system that are responsible for the flight and fright, they use up a lot of vitamin C. So you need to feed and nourish them with those good nutrients and good complex carbohydrates, which give you energy without overdoing the carbohydrates. And the things that negatively impact the nervous system are your cakes and your biscuits and your fast foods. And you know, if you're healthy, the 80-20 rule is okay. If 80% of the time your diet is good and you're creating that really healthy microbiome, you're absorbing really good nutrients, then 20% of the time, you know, you can have your treats. It just depends on where you are. If you've got a serious disease, then you have to be stricter for longer. And if you have some sort of pathology, that will have an effect on your nervous system in making you more irritable or more angry. And so starving that out by not having carbohydrates and sugars will help your mood. And then you've got foods that really help to relax you. So a glass of warm milk with a spice, say some warm milk with cardamom, or if you can't tolerate milk, then hot coconut milk or almond milk is very, very soothing, relaxing, and can help you sleep better, which is part of your nervous system as well. And then you've got foods that spice the nervous system up a bit. So a little bit of dark chocolate has something called theothrombin in it, which is a little bit like caffeine, so that will make you very alert. But if you overdo the dark chocolate, you'll get anxiety and you'll be too hyperactive. So that's part of your nervous system as well. So it's just having that balance of not having things that make you too hyperactive and anxious, and not having things that make you depressed and sluggish, and keeping that middle balance with a good Mediterranean diet and anti-inflammatory foods and spices.
Do you have any special tips for our viewers?
So if you're having junk foods, move to a more healthy junk food. So for example, takeaways, sushi takeaway would be much more healthy than a pizza. So just have a look around at what you can do. If you have really busy days, on the days that you're not busy, get some glass containers and freeze lots of meals so that you can pull them out on days that you're busy, and then you'll have less junk food. Avoid having things in the house that are unhealthy. So you know, you don't have to have chocolates and biscuits and cakes in the house unless you're having a particular visitor that day, but it's not healthy for your family either. And instead have an abundance of fruit and vegetables in your pantry and in your fridge and on your kitchen bench, so that they are healthy snacks. Nuts and seeds are healthy snacks as well.
That's such good information, Michèle. Thank you. If you'd like to know more about how food affects our digestive system and our nervous system and Michèle Wolff, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And we'll say bye-bye for now, and we'll see you next time. If you'd like to know more about our show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.